and felt that if anywhere in the world, they would be here. And now, Darren lives in Whitehorse.
That was my vibe. Okay. Gonna pace a lot. Gonna pace a lot. Okay. My speech is called "How Ivar Kreuger's Legacy Remains Today," or "How Not to Invest," or "Things to Watch Out For When Investing," or "How to Spot a Bullshitter," or "Never Trust a Guy with a Yacht Named Swallow," or "But He Didn't." So I'm gonna talk about a guy called Ivar Kreuger today. Born in 1880 in Sweden, he's living a good life. He decides, nah, maybe I should move to New York. So he moves to New York. He's like, okay, I'm gonna live in New York. He becomes an engineer. He has a successful construction company. No big deal. He could have lived that way. He could have just had that life, but he didn't. He decides, I'm going to move back to Sweden where my dad lives. It's great. He has a company. I'm going to take over that company. The company is awesome. Through some wily, shifty ways, Kreuger eventually takes over the whole company, buys out his uncle, and all of a sudden he is the owner of a giant company that makes matches. Matches. Okay? So, he's all of a sudden he does two things now. Anyone who knows economics knows of vertical integration and horizontal integration. What that means is he starts buying up other match companies, like match companies. And vertical integration means he starts buying up companies that help the means of production for matches. For example, logging. He owned like half of the logs up in Sweden. And mining, he owns the phosphorus. Railways to ship all that stuff. So he becomes kind of the Scandinavian match guy. And he could have just stopped there. He could have said, I'm done. I am the Scandinavian match guy. But
he didn't.
He didn't. He has these global aspirations for matches. So what he does, he creates a couple crazy shell companies. He creates a thing called dual class shares, which you may have heard of. What that is two types of shares. This is what Google has. This is what brought down Conrad Black. A shares means you have one share, you get one vote. No problem, that's awesome. B shares means you have one share, you get 1/1000th of a vote, which means nothing, so you have like 0 votes. But what he does is, he sells all the B class shares to his friends, and he keeps the A class shares. What does that mean is, he has 90% of the voting rights, but he only has 5% of the equity, which is a really smart idea. So he creates this empire, a big empire, and he starts loaning money to countries. He loans Germany like $125 million after World War I because they needed all that money for the reparation payment. What's crazy though, he also lends money to friends, and they don't even like each other. So you never trust a guy that lends money to countries that are fighting. And he gets all these investors in New York all over the world, and he's paying 25% dividends. Anybody who is an investor knows if you're getting 25% dividends, you have to have crazy growth. And his growth is only 8%. So you have single-digit growth, double-digit dividends. That's not, no. He's growing, and eventually he's selling 20 billion boxes of matches a year. That's more fucking matches than anybody needs. He has 75% of the match market. 75% in the world. In the whole world. Okay. He's living a pretty awesome life. Let's keep going. Okay. And he's living this really lavish lifestyle. He's got like boats and shit, and he has a yacht, and the yacht is named Swallow. Not like the swallow, like, hey man, I love birds, I'm gonna name the yacht after a bird. Like, just swallow the verb. Swallow. And he gets in film distribution, and supposedly he got Greta Garbo for a big break and all that kind of bullshit. So, I'm just gonna
5 minutes.
Perfect. Okay. So, one thing though is people start asking some questions to Kreuger, like, hey man, you have $600 million in assets, 200 million is your match empire, and 400 is just called other. Like, fucking audit is other. This is other. And like, what is this thing you've made called off-balance sheet obligations? Anybody who knows about Enron knows that Enron relied on off-balance sheet obligations. Then fuck them. But nobody like. And Kreuger invented these. He invented off-sheet balance obligations. Crazy. So, eventually, as you can imagine, and the whole time, he could have just stopped. He could have just said, you know what? I'm done.
But he didn't.
So eventually, the 1920s come, he's rich as shit, and it's all exposed as a giant quasi-Ponzi scheme. Not a real Ponzi scheme, because as you know, a Ponzi scheme is basically you take money from an investor here and you give it to an investor here. There's nothing in the middle. There's no real product. But with Kreuger, he had the matches, so there's real products, which was cool. But it's a total scam. He has $600 million supposedly. That turns out $100 million of that is just fake Italian bonds that he made himself. And he spelled the names wrong on the bonds, which is the worst part. 250 million of that is also just made up. So what does Kreuger do? What does he do? He goes home, he puts on his nicest suit that he could ever find, and shoots himself. Kills himself. Don't say aw. So the point of my whole speech is A, Kreuger was kind of crazy. B, we don't learn our lessons because this happened in the 30s and this shit still happens today. Bernie Madoff has been called like the real Ivar Kreuger. So the point is, if you become a Scandinavian match mogul, just enjoy it. You become a match mogul. Yeah.